What's up, and welcome back to episode 3 of Real Talk. And today we're talking about the one that talks about being humble. Being humble is a thing that everyone talks about. Some people have an ego, some people don't. Some people hate talking about themselves, some people love talking about themselves. And this is a weird topic because there's a fine line. There's a fine line between being humble and being confident. I know I tend to lean more towards not talking about anything that I do. I actually had a weird encounter with somebody recently where I was getting introduced, and my friend that was introducing me started talking about some of the work that I've done. And I just kind of froze up, and I was like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm some hot shot because I've worked with these cool clients, but at the same time, whenever you're meeting somebody new, it's valuable for them to know what you've done, especially if it's in the work space. If I'm just meeting a new friend, I don't necessarily need to tell them what I've done, but for this example, I was on site and I was meeting people that were in my industry. I was meeting people that I could possibly have a relationship with down the line. And so in those scenarios, there is value in gassing yourself up in a way. You don't want to talk about yourself too much, but you can't shy away from talking about yourself because at the end of the day, they have no idea who you are. In this scenario, he had no idea who I was. And I know that I had every right to be there, but I'm sitting there and it's just a weird feeling because I don't want to try and validate myself. I'd rather have my work show for itself and let my value come more through the deliverables that I give than me telling him that I've done these shoots with these different companies. And it was a funny scenario. It was one of those things that I think I looked at and I was like, oh my gosh, I seemed like such a weirdo there. But to everyone else, it was just like a normal encounter. I just overthought it because my friend was talking about my clients that I have. And I just kind of froze up and I was like, yeah, I do this pretty often. I do it full time. And then the conversation just came to an end, which was so awkward. But it doesn't matter to other people. And that's a totally different topic where you just judge yourself so much harder than other people judge you. That whenever you judge yourself, it's all because you know what you're capable of. I clearly have been pumping out my own content recently, and that devil on your shoulder tells you not to post more often than you would think. I challenge you to try posting more and try getting vulnerable a little bit on camera for social media. And you might say something a little bit off, or you might slip up, you might mumble a little bit, you might hesitate a little bit, and then that devil on your shoulder will be saying, don't post it, it's got to be perfect, but that's not the case. But going back to not being afraid to talk about what you've done, whenever you meet people, like I said, there's a difference between a business relationship and a personal relationship. The business relationship, you're not really going to come off as cocky if you start to talk about what you've done, because that's the scenario that you're in. At the end of the day, you need to validate yourself. You need to validate the fact that you are there for a reason. Or if you're pitching a client, you need to pretty much explain to them why they should hire you. And with that being said, you need to build up your credibility. So you might need to name drop. You might need to talk about some different work that you've done. But whenever you're in more personal relationships, you don't have to talk about the things that you've done. If people ask, by all means, tell them. But it's such an awkward moment whenever you are asked by a friend or like a mutual friend what you do. And I know I always just say oh, I'm a photographer, whatever. and then they can build whatever opinions they want, because I honestly don't give a shit what they think. And sometimes I need to validate myself, sometimes I don't. You got to feel it out. But those personal relationships, you need to come off as a humble person if that's something that you value. If you don't care about that, then by all means, just ignore what I'm saying. But whenever you meet those new people, not talking about everything you've done is valuable. I have actually found value in asking people more questions about themselves. You want to be interested. If you're interested in what somebody else is doing, then you inevitably come off as humble. Somebody that's not humble, somebody that's cocky, they love talking about themselves. And that, I hate that trait. I'm the kind of person, like I mentioned in the last video, that always wants to be the person that people come to. And whenever you are asked what you do, whenever you're meeting somebody new and you just talk about yourself, talk about this cool thing you've done, talk about that cool thing you've done, it's annoying. I hate whenever people do it, whenever I'm interacting with them. And if I'm talking to somebody and all that they've talked about is the projects they've done in the past, or like this cool job they had, this cool thing they've done, I'm just like, all right, like, cool, like, you're good at what you do, but it really doesn't affect me at all. And that's just it's a weird feeling. It makes the whole situation pretty awkward whenever somebody's just gassing themselves up. But going back to talking to people about themselves, asking questions, starting to learn about them. Maybe they're just an interesting person. Maybe it could turn into a business relationship, but you shouldn't go into it with a mindset of it definitely being a business relationship, because then you always are looking to get something out of people. I really, really hate whenever I am talking to somebody, or whenever just anyone in my life has the idea of, I gave you something, now I need to get something in return. It can be something as small as somebody buying you coffee. They might buy you coffee, and them buying you coffee is a reason for you to give them something that they want. I know people that do that, and I know people that will do something that seems like they went out of their way, but then sure enough, 2 weeks later, they're calling you and asking you to do them a favor. There's nothing wrong with doing people favors, but don't do it just because you want something in return. I think that just like random acts of kindness are a great thing, and they can also be taken the wrong way if you seem like you're always giving to take. I think you should give, and then once you need something, you have those good relationships to piggyback off of. Then you can really not take from them, but you can just have them help you out. You can bring them on for projects. You can even just like go to them as a friend, like, hey, I need a favor. Like, can you go pick this up for me? Can you drop this off for me? Me and my roommate, who's also my best friend, we actually laugh about this all the time, because we are in the minority of people and how they believe in this. Like, something as simple as, I don't know, I have a busy week and he'll just cook a ton of food, and then I have something to eat whenever I like just pop home for 20 minutes and then leave. Like, that's just a simple thing that there's nothing being asked in return. That's just a favor. He might have more time on his hands. I do the same thing. If he's having a busy week and I just have more time, probably more out of boredom than doing favors, I just kind of pick up the house a little bit more, cook a little bit more food. But you shouldn't ask for something in return. So being humble it's a fine line, like I mentioned. And that fine line tiptoes between you talking about what you do and you giving yourself the validation to somebody else who might not necessarily know who you are. And on the other end, it's just you talking about yourself way too much. So don't be afraid to tell people what you've done. But just steer away from talking about yourself too much. And if people ask you how you're doing, if people ask you different clients you've been working with, just answer the question that they're asking. You don't have to piggyback off of it and say, oh, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. Like, oh, I'm just killing it. Because then people probably will end up hating you. I honestly don't like people at all whenever they are cocky, whenever they're arrogant, because there's no better quality in somebody than them being giving. They don't need to give all the time, but you can clearly tell whenever somebody just has a good heart, a genuine heart. And it's something that I like about living in the Midwest too. Living in the Midwest is just part of the culture. People help you out. People want to give you a hand, and you don't realize that until you necessarily leave it. And there's something about just like that genuine kindness that I know the South has as well. Pittsburgh had it growing up. It's just like having that community where if somebody's struggling, you pick them up, and that you only build that if you're a good person to be around, and you only build that if people feel like they can relax whenever they're with you. And that comes with being humble. Nobody wants to hear somebody talk about themselves all the time. So I guess the main takeaway is, while you should be humble all the time, don't be afraid to talk about yourself a little bit whenever you need to. Don't be afraid to validate yourself, because it is okay. I struggle with that. But just kind of figure out where you need to stop. All you need to do is say one or two things, and then you can be done. Somebody might get annoyed if you say that third thing. Just feel out the conversations. And if I had one recommendation, I would say lean more on the end of not talking about what you're doing, how successful you are, and it'll serve you a lot better just as time progresses. Thanks. See you guys next time.